There we go. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I always like to open up with a song. But if you heard my voice, you really wouldn't want that. Hi, my name is Dan Montano. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Życie Genesis Medicine. Życie is the Ukrainian word for life. Genesis is the new beginning. My wife from Ukraine, when we were trying to figure out a name for the company, made the suggestion we use Życie. For all the married men in the audience, you know it's better to say yes right away than to drag the pain out for a few more days. So the name of the company is Życie Genesis Medicine, and I'm going to be talking about investing in biotechnology, important concepts to succeed. Now, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm 70 years old. I was born in East Los Angeles. I was born extremely poor. And the good news about being born very poor is that you learn that business should always be positive cash flow. There is no story of somebody poor starting and running a business for 10 years losing $1 billion, okay? Poor people have to start making money right away, and so I'm a fanatic believer. I have a Bachelor of Science in Business and Accounting. I have an MBA in Finance from the University of Southern California. I spent 7 years as a professor of finance, accounting, and economics at 3 different universities. I started the investment business in August of 1968 on the floor of the Los Angeles Stock Exchange. And just to tell you that story, they weren't hiring poor, uneducated Mexicans at the time. And I'm half Mexican. My mother's Irish. Okay, so that's why you got to watch me drinking, which is why it's very limited. So I walked up to them. I wanted a job. They said, they're not hiring. I said, I'm going to work for free. So for the first 3 months, I worked for free on the floor of the exchange. And at the end of that, somebody came to me and said, you're phenomenal. I'll hire you. And they decided to start paying me rather than let me go to another firm. I was with firms such as Noble Cook, Hayden Stone, Shearson, Lehman Brothers. And I have handled over 100 IPOs for high technology companies. Now, everybody has a problem with that, but first of all, we're talking over 30 years, number one. Number two, at the right old age of 69, in 1969, I was 21 years old, and a company came to what was then Noble Cook and Company, which became Wedbush Noble Cook, which is now Wedbush. They wanted to raise money for a mini computer company called Microdata. Old Man Noble is what we called him. Little did I know he was only 45. Said, does anybody here have any experience in computers? 21 years old, I'm a junior in college, I'm taking Computer 101 right now. So because everybody else slinked in their chairs, I was given the job of walking this private placement through. And we raised $1.5 million for this company called Microdata, which was one of the first mini computer companies. We took it public a year later for $6 a share. Was sold out to McDonnell Douglas 3 years later for $254 a share. So let me explain to you genius. If it goes from $1 to $254, everybody thinks you're a genius, even if you were sitting in the back seat of the bus and did nothing. So what happened was companies who wanted to raise money for mini computers came to me, and people who wanted to invest in mini computers came to me. So I helped start about 7 mini computer companies. And to give you an idea of how technology was in the early 1970s, if somebody had an X-ray machine, you put it in front of a mini computer, and behind it you put a printer, and you had a medical diagnostic company. And we would do ultrasound, different mini computer, and on, starting a company every month. And then somebody'd come to you and say, you know, mini computers are just big and bulky. Why don't you do it with a microcomputer? Whole another 3 years of taking new companies, replacing the ones I had started before. And then somebody comes and says, I got a microprocessor. So in case you don't know it, I helped start CT companies, microprocessor companies, etc. And so the computer industry is something I know, and I did a lot of IPOs in that time. I participated in 100 startups. I'm a fanatic optimist. I believe in tomorrow, and I have no fear of failure. One of the great things about being a venture capitalist in the 1970s is you actually used your own money. Nowadays, they have some MBA from Harvard. I have nothing against Harvard, except they're lousy students. They have no experience. If you don't fit this box, if you don't do this and that, half the companies that I was involved in and became successful and were worth a fortune, the original plan was wrong. I financed a company called International Rublimation in northern San Diego. Larry Goshorn, he had founded a computer company called General Automation. Great story. Made a couple $100 million. He did. I only made about 10. International Rublimation was going to make a robotic arm. Great. We put up privately a couple $1 million, took them public, raised $8 million, went to the first big robot show. The robot was fantastic. Not as good as the one from Japan. And as we all know in the real world, people, if you come in second place, you lose. The good news was Larry Goshorn was a nut. And to make his robot work, he had developed an artificial visionary system so the robot could see. And a year later, he sold that company for $200 million to Federal Express because every package that goes on that conveyor belt is read by that vision system. Failure is a process in developing a company. And it's one of the things I'm extremely good at is failure. I have probably lost more money than all of you in this room put together. And the interesting thing is I still have some. I ran an international investment banking operation in London for 5 years. I have extensive contacts throughout the Middle East, Asia, South America, and I've given numerous presentations in over 40 countries. So we're going to talk about biotech investing. First of all, I'm going to talk about the young biotech. So for those of you who read the Wall Street Journal, this is old news. But the Wall Street Journal in October had a story that 70% of all of the new drugs being advanced at the FDA are from young companies or startups. It's amazing how many people say, oh, why isn't Pfizer doing this? Why isn't Johnson & Johnson doing this? I can tell you people, in 20 years, Pfizer has spent $15 billion a year on R&D. That comes to over $300 billion, and they have not discovered one thing. Now, they do take their cash flow and buy other companies. But let me tell you what I believe. I don't believe they spend $15 billion a year and flush it down the drain because they're idiots. I believe that is how they justify the prices they charge. Oh, we have to charge these prices because we lose so much money in R&D. 70% is young startups. This is where the innovation is taking place. Biotech is not for risk-averse people. If you don't like uncertainty, if you don't like risk, this is not where you should be. Now, if you're the person like me that is so excited about tomorrow, and for those of you here for the first time, as you've heard, I'm 70 years old. I believe I only have another good 30, 40 years before I have to retire. I've got to make a fortune again. Now, one of my great strengths is being able to see into the future by using common sense. Now, this is important because I'm amazed at how many smart people are morons because they don't use common sense to see the future. For those of you who know, in the center, California, there's a place called Owens Valley. It's a semi-desert. I can go to Owens Valley. I can look at the mountains, the Sierra Mountains. I can see snow at the top of it. I can look at a dry gully that runs down the side of that mountain, and I can predict when summer comes and the snow melts, there'll be water in that gully. Thank you, thank you. I have a friend that has told me I cannot predict the future, and now for 50 years in a row, I have predicted successfully 100 times, 100% of the time, that winter will come after fall. So what I'm talking about in looking to the future is using common sense. And things I'm going to point out, I hope are common sense. Now, for those of you in the room, you know experience is the best teacher. And the reason experience is the best teacher is because the tuition cost the most. If you didn't learn through experience, you don't remember it. Let me tell you something, people. One afternoon, I lost $6 million in a transaction. It put me on the edge. I called my partners and said, we need to have lunch. They thought I was going to commit suicide. They said, what? I said, hey, I just paid $6 million to learn something. Tell me what it was. Now, I'm going to share with you the experience and the knowledge on biotech investing. And the most important thing for you to keep in mind is it's worth what you paid for it. And you're paying nothing for it. This is my opinion, an opinion of a guy that lost $200 million in biotech investing. So don't go out of here and come back and say, oh my gosh, I followed his advice and lost money. I'm going to sue the Republican. It's worth what you pay for it. These are ideas to teach you about biotech investing. First of all, concept number one, most important of all, cash. If you're investing for any reason other than to make more cash, you're a fool. Cash is king. Cash is that stuff you can spend, that stuff you can save. So many people invest because, oh, it's a great idea. Oh, I'm investing because blah, blah, blah. There's one reason you invest, and that is to make more cash. I don't care if you go to the bank and put your money in the bank and are going to get 3% back. It's to get back more cash. I don't care if you buy a piece of real estate and you buy it to get back more cash. Now, I was hired to do turnaround work in South Korea. I love the Koreans, okay? Except I couldn't help them do turnarounds because they would lose face if they sold that building, that trophy building they had bought. The bank wants its money. The bank's going to put you in bankruptcy. Sell the building. Oh, I would lose face. I would rather go kill myself than lose face. That is not investing. So cash is king. When I was a professor, I told all my students, if you know Montano's law, cash is king, you'll automatically get a C, which is why many of the athletes were in my class. Concept two, unmet medical need. Now this is important, people. The FDA has a designation called unmet medical need. That means something that there is presently no therapy to treat that disease. So let me start first with a met medical need. There are 286 prescriptions and assets that the FDA has approved. If you go to the doctor right now and say, I got stomach pain, there are 286 prescriptions he can give you. You can go to the drugstore and pick up another 30, 40 choices. It is a well-serviced medical need. Unmet medical need means there is no treatment. Curing cancer, curing Parkinson's disease, curing Alzheimer's. These are unmet medical needs. Therefore, the regulators give you a priority, the payers give you a priority, the doctors and hospitals give you a priority, and the patients give you a priority. Unmet medical need. Now, if some company is talking about raising $400 million for a new RNA interference transmission or whatever, that is not addressing a medical need. That's developing a technology. I only believe in chasing a known medical need that is not serviced. Disease-modifying agent. FDA terminology. This is a drug or pharmaceutical or treatment that modifies the disease. The other category is symptom-modifying agent. If I've got a cold and I go to the store and buy antihistamine to dry up my nose, it addresses the symptom of my runny nose. It does not address my underlying disease. Disease-modifying agent means it changes the outcome of the disease. Once again, if it's a disease-modifying agent, the regulators will treat you better, the payers will treat you better, the medical providers will treat you better, and the patients will treat you better. In Dr. Jacobs and Vika's presentation, they talked about healing diabetic foot ulcers, unmet medical need. They talked about growing blood vessels in the heart for no-option heart patients, unmet medical need. The reason I'm saying this is when you're addressing an unmet medical need like Parkinson's disease, you get treated better. FDA breakthrough designation. Now, most of you have never heard of this. The FDA realizing and wanting to advance diseases or treatments for diseases, if something is an unmet medical need and a disease-modifying agent, the FDA may give it what is called breakthrough designation. This is where the FDA says this is important, and therefore we're going to perhaps approve you after phase 2. This is important. We're going to let you do this. This is important. Now, for all of you folks that came earlier, you know we've been working on this for 20 years. If you want, I can show the original business plan. We're supposed to be finished 17 years ago. The one thing you're always going to get in biotech is delays. Now, this designation, to me, is an achievement point because 2 examples. When the FDA has given the breakthrough designation, there's a company in San Diego called Acadia Pharmaceutical. They have one approved drug now called neuroplasty. And you've seen the commercials on TV, the guy who has a hallucination from Parkinson's, he sees a dog and blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's to treat hallucinations in late-stage Parkinson's patients. It has the same brain target as Prozac. In my mind, it's a tranquilizer. The U.S. gave them a breakthrough designation. Their stock market value was $3.8 billion. Now, I want to clarify something. They had no drug approved. They had nothing for sale. But because of the potential, the market value of that company, stock market value, was $3.8 billion because they had a FDA breakthrough designation. Now, I don't know about you folks, but if I've got nothing to sell and people think I'm worth $3.8 billion, I got a chance. So, case study number 2, Intercept Pharmaceutical. Went public October 2012 at 19. January 2015, they had no FDA-approved drug. The shares opened on Friday, January the 30th at $167 a share. The same day they announced they had received the breakthrough designation. At the end of the day, it closed at 201, 17%. Increase in one day, $660 million. The only thing that happened between the morning and the afternoon was the FDA giving them that designation. And investors raced in and took the value to $4.3 billion. Now, I know a lot of you in this room are successful, but if there's anybody in this room that would be unhappy making $660 million in one day, I want to meet you. Concept 5, only chase big opportunities. When I first was an investment banker and I first started off, I was chasing every piece of business I could, like every hungry person is. And what I started realizing is chasing small opportunities is much riskier than chasing big opportunities. If you come to me and you say, hey, I got the greatest idea for a fast food hamburger joint, right. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm saying there are plenty of them out there. Thin margins, competitive. Why are you different? How are you going to succeed? It's tough. You can make a mistake. The weather can be against you. Bad luck can be against you. Because your margin of error is so finite, you can fail even though you were 100% right. So I only chase big opportunities. The reason's simple. I'm not very smart. I've learned that if you chase a big opportunity, no matter how much you make mistakes, no how many errors you make, no matter how much bad luck you have, the opportunity is so big, somebody will come along and take it off your hands or help you. So example, instead of a hamburger joint, you come to me and say, Dan, I've got the rights to an oil field in Texas. I think it's got 100 billion barrels. I'm your best buddy. You got a possible field with 100 billions of barrels of crude? How can we fix it? No matter how stupid you are, no matter how incompetent I am, no matter how many mistakes we make, after 4 years, somebody will come along and try to take that opportunity off of us, either with our consent or without it. Big opportunities allow for errors. We've gone through 130 million working on our drugs. I invested everything we have. I borrowed $1 million on our home, put it in the company. I went through my 401ks. I went through everything. I lost $200 million, and people have said to me, am I crazy? The answer is no, because I believe it's a big opportunity and that we're going to succeed eventually. Concept number 6, marketplace exclusivity. For those of you who heard Jack's presentation, large pharmaceutical companies went to the governments and said, hey, the average patent lasts 18 to 20 years. The average drug to get approved is 26 years. For those of you who can't do math, that's not a good deal, because that means by the time the drug gets through the approval process, the patents are all gone. So Europe and the United States came out with a thing called marketplace exclusivity, which means in the United States you get 12 years, in Europe you get 10 years. From the time the drug is approved, nobody can compete against you in that medical indication with that molecule. Now, for those of you who are wondering, how stupid am I? Let me tell you, look up Celgene. Celgene is a company that took a drug that in the 1950s and 60s, thalidomide, caused the flipper babies. Mothers took it when they were pregnant and the arms didn't develop because it restricted the blood vessel growth. Thalidomide was a chemical drug. It was banned. It is a horrible drug. It lost its patents in the mid-1960s. Celgene picked it up, introduced it to treat cancer, to restrict the blood flow vessels around tumors. They use this exclusivity because anybody in this room can go out and make thalidomide in 24 hours if you know how to do chemistry. They got a marketplace exclusivity, and their first revenues came from a drug that was 50 years old, that they had marketplace protection, and they generated $2 billion a year in profit off of it for 10 years. Once again, this is better than patents, because a patent means you're going to get a lawsuit. I used to specialize and work with companies that have patents. I'm not a big believer in patents. The only reason they created patents was so lawyers could get rich arguing over them. Okay. Marketplace exclusivity, once it's granted, nobody can touch it for 10 years. Next, value of new treatment versus cost standard of care. Now, once again, I mentioned that I had come out of the computer, semiconductor industry, electronics business. This is an Apple phone. If I develop a phone to compete with this, and it's going to sell for $8,000, be as big as a suitcase, have a battery life of 30 minutes, I'm not going to succeed as a competitor. In the computer and electronics business during the 70s and 80s, and still today, there was a thing called price performance. If you did not have a 30% price performance advantage over the existing competitor, and we're talking about in those days IBM, and for many of you in the room, you may not know this, IBM was a computer company once upon a time. You know, I like seeing people in the audience with gray hair because they go, IBM, I remember, it was the giant. Well, I'll tell you something. Go to a college now and mention IBM. They have no idea what you're talking about. But if you do not provide value, versus standard of care. Now, standard of care is if you break your arm and go to the hospital, there is a certain set standard of care they give you. And the payers will pay a certain amount for that standard of care. Everything is standard of care if that is what's delivered to you. I cannot believe when I hear pharmaceuticals coming out with treatments that go against standard of care and they cost 20 times more. Pfizer came out with an inhaled insulin, $1,500 a month. Regular treatment was $100 a month. Guess what the payers said? No. Okay? So I believe that you have to offer value. I believe that when you hear a company announce that they're going to charge something over or above standard of care, you're a fool, unless the treatment is that much better. 30%. Now, if the treatment is better, there's a reason you may pay more. But you need to ask that question. Pfizer announced last week they're going to come out with a treatment that's going to cost $2 million. How many people in this room are looking forward to buying that treatment? How about when you hear about a cancer treatment which is $30,000 a month and is hoped to extend somebody's life by 2 months? Now, my father died of cancer. I'm not sure 2 more months would have been humane. The point I'm saying is you have to look at this, especially because times are changing. You need to understand the timing in achieving certain milestones. If you sit there and you talk to somebody who is running a biotech company, and by the way, I love PhDs, I love medical doctors, no wonder they fail when they go into business, okay? If you sit down and you say, what is the timing of this? And they don't have an answer, do not invest. I will tell you this, if you have somebody that is a hard-nosed, disciplined, punctual demander of excellence, like I am, you're only off by 15, 20 years. It is the toughest thing in the world to run these projects because everybody you're dealing with is slow. I'm talking slower than you can imagine. In the 1990s, I was asked to go to the former communist world and help them convert from communism to free markets. If they're busy making money, they won't be making bombs. Let me tell you something. It never entered my mind that the communist bureaucrats are actually more responsive than big pharma's executives. Okay. It's sad but true. The reason I'm saying this, you need milestones, you need objectives so that you can see, does this fit what you need? Next, no one's going to like this one. You have to see the future, cost, using common sense. This is going to offend all of you, but then again, if I was a nice guy, I wouldn't be here. I did my graduate thesis in insurance. Insurance is when you calculate the odds of an uncertain event, charge a premium among a lot of people so that if that event happens, those people can be reimbursed and the other people don't have to worry about it wiping them out. Insurance is a very exacting science. Today, what is called health insurance is not. You cannot charge $500 a month for something that you know is going to cost you $5,000 a month to provide. That is not insurance. The healthcare system is bankrupt. It is bankrupt beyond your imagination, and it is corrupt beyond your imagination. The United States is probably the most financially sound country in the world in that area, which should really scare you about the rest of the world. But the teachers in Los Angeles are promised lifetime health care. The firemen are promised lifetime health care. You have a situation in the United States where everybody knows the pension funds and the pensions are underfunded and we don't have enough money to pay the pensions. The pensions are an actuarial analysis. But health care is promised, and it is an uncontrollable expense. It's undefinable. In the case of a pension, the government sets aside so much money, or the company sets aside so much money, and you can see if it's funded or unfunded. But in health care, there is no accrual for that. It comes out of the annual budget. That's why the costs are going crazy. That's why there is no control. Now, my wife, Vika, a couple of months ago, she had some dental work done. She hates any kind of anesthesia. She actually has her teeth drilled on without anesthesia. Every time I say that, I just get a chill. Okay. So she had some work done. The next day, she said, I'm in pain. I want to get something. So I knew it had to be real pain. She decided to go to the emergency room in a hospital. She's not a fool. She went to the emergency room. She said, I had some teeth work done. I'm in pain. I'd like to see a doctor. I'd like to get a prescription for a mild blah, blah, blah. How much does it cost? Now, how many of you think that's a complex question? You guys have done it, I can tell. They said $250. She paid him. She saw the doctor, 3 minutes, gave the prescription, she went and got the stuff. A month later, we got a bill from the hospital for $1,500 using the emergency room. A week after that, we got a bill from the doctor for $2,400 for using the emergency doctor services. Now, in case you have never gotten those bills, how many of you have gotten those bills? Yeah. You get the bills, and there's a phone number if you disagree, right? People, I am white with anger. I am calling that number constantly for days. No one ever answers. No one ever answers. After about 3 weeks, I finally gave up. The medical system is corrupt. The payment system is corrupt. And you have to look into the future, and if you're looking at a biotechnology company that says, I'm going to get more for this from an insurance provider, you're asking for trouble. I believe that this country is going to evolve like it is socialized medicine in Europe, which I live there, I know it, I studied it. You have one system where the government pays, and you have the other system where people pay for their own care by cash. You have one that kills you, you have one that saves you. In England, where I went there to meet with them on the heart issue, in England, if you need a bypass, they will not pay for a bypass unless you have less than 2 years to live. If a doctor says this person has 2 years, you can go on the list for a bypass. Oh, how long is the waiting line? 3 years to actually be treated. No, it gets better. Because if you live past 2 years, obviously the doctor's diagnosis was wrong and you're off the list. But once again, my wife Vika lived in the Soviet Union. They had guaranteed college, guaranteed income, guaranteed health care, one-payer system. First time I went to the Ukraine, one of my friends stepped on something in the apartment or the hotel room. We threw him in a taxi, we raced to the hospital. Being stupid Americans, somebody's hurt, you go to the hospital. The entourage that was there to show us around, as soon as they showed up at the hotel and found out we had left, go roaring down and sirens blaring, rescue team. They pull up the hospital and say, don't go in there, you're crazy. You go in there, you'll never live. They're infected, they're diseased, you got to bring your own bandages, you got to bring your own syringes. Am I right? You're from Russia, yes? A little drama extra. No, it's bad. Okay? Yes, sir.
In 1960, the cost of a hospital bed for a day was $24. I know it because I was in.
Well, when my first...
In World War II, in 1942, it was about $7. And of course, in today's dollars, it's maybe 200 after allowing
Well, when my first child was born, in 1972 at St. Mary's Hospital in Long Beach. I had no insurance. In fact, I have refused to have any insurance pay for my children as a matter of principle, even when I had insurance. First kid, 1972, St. Mary's Hospital, $200. Last kid, $8,000. Nothing went wrong. Just $8,000. Now, I did enjoy the private room. That was nice. But you've got to see common sense, because the future is, if a company tells you, like Pfizer did, we're going to charge $2 million for this, you got to be pretty dumb to bet on that horse, okay? Concept 10, believe in what you're doing. Makes the journey easier. If you invest in XYZ company and they're developing an RNA inhibitor transfer, what is it? How can you put your heart and soul into it? If somebody comes to you and it's something you care about, if it's something you care about because it affected your mother or it affects you, it makes the journey easier. Life is short, people, and the only thing I've ever found that I get for sure is surprises. And for those of you who have never run a business, let me tell you right now, in business the word surprise is always negative. Always negative. If they say, oh, we had a surprise on inventory, oh my God, what went wrong? Oh, we have a surprise with our employees, what went wrong? You don't want surprises, but you're going to get them. So if you're involved in something you believe in, that the outcome means more to you than just cash, it'll make the journey easier. In summation, these are the concepts. Think of them as filters. Cash matters. Drugs that treat an unmet medical need, disease-modifying agents, FDA breakthrough designation, chase-only big opportunities, market exclusivity, value of new treatments, timing of milestone achievements, future of healthcare. Believe in what you're doing. So I'll be glad to take questions. Do I still have time, sir? Thank you. Yes, sir.
Are the companies willing to give you all this information? Because if you say to me that they're giving away a whole lot of information, it might allow somebody else, like a Pfizer, to step on their...
Okay, first, let me answer a question that you didn't ask. First of all, for those that you think Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and Roche and all the big boys are out there trying to gobble up everything, wrong. They don't care when you bring it to them. They don't care for a whole bunch of bureaucratic reasons. We met with a bunch of them talking about our heart. When the financial crisis happened, people, believe me, I kissed every in the world. I went to hundreds of pharmaceutical companies looking for partnerships. We met with these people. We said, look at our data. It's overwhelming. You know what their response was? Oh, you don't have a patent. Our intellectual property people won't let us proceed without a patent. So for all of you that think these guys are out there and they're deadly, they're not. Okay, number one. Number two is, all these questions that we talked about, those are common sense. These are all common sense questions. Somebody says to you, oh, I'm working on something, blah, blah. You can say, hey, is that an unmet medical need? I mean, that's not a simple, you know. How many people realize that 100 years ago, tuberculosis, pneumonia, syphilis were incurable diseases, right? Everybody then knew it. Today we know they're not. So all of these questions are common sense. Listen, people, I used to try to be sophisticated and then I could never finish the equation. You have to remember, I went to the University of Southern California. If I could have done fractions, I could have gone to UCLA. So the reason I say that is these are all simple, common sense questions. Other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
If you're looking to get all of those met before you invest, at what point in the cycle of the biotech discovery do you invest? Because some of that stuff doesn't happen unless you get 5 years in, 10 years in.
Well, and I'm...
At what point do you layer yourself in?
Okay, no, I like your question. First of all, I apologize if I indicated that you need all of these, okay? And there are varying degrees that you may have. For those of you in the audience that don't realize it, I'm not pregnant. I'm overweight, okay? The reason I'm saying that is you can figure out pretty quick, is it an unmet need? You can figure out, does it change the disease or the symptoms? This one you can't figure out in advance. But if they don't have these two, that's a longer shot. Then you come down here and you say, is it big? Oh, this guy wants to open a gas station at the corner of 5th and Main, wherever 5th and Main is, and there's 3 other gas stations, but he's going to work hard. Nah. Here's a guy who has a new computer programmer that's going to make me look good. I'll buy that. These are common sense questions, and yes, you measure it. But like everything in life, you have to weigh it, decide it. We all know one thing. When your mother made Irish stew, it was the best Irish stew in the world. And her recipe was her own. Yes, sir.
The follow-up question is, which of those are deal breakers? Which of those you hit it and you go, no.
There's only one. Believe in, if you don't believe in it, walk. People, losing money is easy. I've done it a lot. The hardest thing about making money is not losing it. If you don't believe in it, why are you there? Okay? Yes, sir.
It seems to me that there's two perspectives on this. One is your perspective, where you look at a potential investment, and if something isn't shaping up right, you can make a difference and get the change. The perspective on the other side of the room is somebody who has to either find those things there or believe it's going to work without them. Because we don't get to impose change on the problem.
Well, you're right. But understand something. When we're looking for investors, I don't want them if they're not believers.
Well, I don't argue.
No. What I'm trying to say is, we have people who have come to us and offered lots of money. Not interested. If you don't believe in what we're doing, I don't care. You're going to be a pain, okay? And from there, then we try to teach them that we have what we have. But the reality of life is very simple. Life is tough enough without adding problems to it. So we don't want people that are not believers. Madge?
Yes.
Do you believe in what we're doing?
Yes.
Is Tom Wood still here?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe?
You bet.
100%.
You can't believe what they had to go through to become investors. Because I'm not a nice person, contrary to what all of you think.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, Ma. She's a Trojan, too. We may not be cute, but we're tough. All right, other questions? Yes, sir.
Just one of those, pick 10 and 2 will be big winners covering the costs of the other 8 that you invested in? Or is it really 50/50 or
No, you have to diversify. 1987, we lost $37 million. And that year, our fund had a $150 million profit. Okay. So you have to diversify. If you don't understand that there is risk in everything, even a sure thing. Now, a lot of you people may not, I went to Turkey a lot during the old days. I have lots of Turkish lira. A million Turkish bill used to be worth 10 cents. Now there's no number small enough to define it, okay? There's always risk. You diversify. Understand, in my case, because I've put everything into this, in my mind, I've diversified by other medical needs. I don't know if this is going to cure Parkinson's, but I'm pretty sure it's going to heal diabetic foot ulcers. But that's also diversification. You're a fool if you don't diversify. When I travel, I carry money in 3 spots in case I get pickpocketed. I hate losing money. One more question, and we need to go. Yes, sir.
You mentioned before that you feel we're going towards single-payer health system.
No, I'm afraid we are.
Okay, that's great. All right, that's fine. And in that case, there's a good chance we're going to have rationing.
Have rationing?
Rationing.
Yeah,
Rationing of health.
absolutely.
And that's a great, that's a
Okay, so let me answer that question. We have set as a corporate objective that our cost of providing the medical treatment has to be 25% of the cost of standard of care. So right now, if something standard of care is $100,000, we have to be $25,000. That is a philosophy that we have put in. A lot of people in the pharmaceutical industry think we're idiots. But please understand something. If we're right, we're going to make a lot of money. And if I have to meet my maker with the fact that I've made a lot of money and I have 12 Bentleys, or we lowered the price and could treat another 12 million people, listen, I know what I did in my early years. I need to improve my resume. So the answer is, look at people. We're not a big corporation. We don't have to make money. We don't have to pay dividends. We're going to. But at 25% of the standard of care, our profit margins are down to 99%. And I can live with that. So we believe the bottom line is you're going to be paying cash one way or another in the next 10 years, and we better start competing for that now. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break now. And are we offline? If you're